Welcome back to the Wolf of Property and Casualty. I am your host, Derek Lasniak, with over 15 years of commercial broking experience focused on the middle market, the upper middle market, national account space. The Wolf of Property and Casualty is a practitioner-led P&C education for buyers, brokers, and carriers. I like to think about it as straight talk, absolutely no bullshit for each and every episode. Today's topic: special handling instructions. And when I say special handling instructions, for brokers out there, your mind probably goes to workers' compensation. That's where my mind goes. And that's where the basis of this podcast is going to be for today is workers' compensation. And the reason that special handling instructions exist is because what I noticed throughout my career in the middle market and upper middle market space is that work comp is the intersection between customer and insurance carrier that has the highest frequency of touches. It's where things inevitably can go wrong. It's where experiences can be challenged on the customer side. For those of you who have listened for a while, you know that I was neurotic about controlling the relationship between my customers and the insurance carriers. I think that if you think about what an agent is supposed to do, we are middlemen. That is our job. We are designing and curating the experience for the customer. And so places where I couldn't have ultimate control over that experience, or where communications happened or interactions happened where I, by its very nature, weren't going to be directly involved or directly managing it or present to make sure it went well, those are places where I was scared. I think that fear is healthy. But that doesn't mean that in these relationships that you can't do everything possible to set up those interactions to be successful. And special handling instructions are the place to do it. Your work comp carrier, specifically the adjusters that handle injured worker cases, are going to have to interact directly with your customer's team members and your customer's team that handles work comp claims. They are not always going to have a member of your brokerage team, whether it's the broker like me or a dedicated work comp liaison. And we had amazing ones at my former employer, amazing ones, all former adjusters. It's impossible for them to be present and to be hand holding and white gloving every single one of these interactions. So how do you set up that relationship for success? You set up the relationship to have special handling instructions. Special handling instructions are a written set of requirements or conditions of the policy placement that are written into the account to make sure things are handled a certain way. And these, much like your insurance contract, you say bind that insurance buyer and you're on the hook for the premium. You're locked into an annual contract. It's got terms and conditions. Well, let me tell you something. As the customer, don't give up all your rights. Before you hit bind or before you move carriers, or even if you're about to come up on a renewal, now is the time to say, here are the things that I want in writing as a condition of handling my work comp. Because for buyers out there, just like you're the CFO, you don't probably touch all the work comp claims, but people on your team do. It's a direct reflection on the decision that you made for the work comp carrier that you're going with. So for today's episode, I'm going to tick through, I don't know, I got like 5 or 6 things that we asked for in every special handling instruction. And the special handling instructions, if we moved carriers, we would make sure that this was part of the proposal and signed off by the underwriter and confirmed in writing that it was going to be granted. You can also implement these at renewal, because some of these things, if they don't cost money, they do take time and energy on your carriers. They're not just going to give them up. But all of these, everything I'm about to mention, I have successfully gotten mostly without any kind of push or pull. So let's kick it off. The first one, and some of these are common sense, some of these are really easy. The first one is when there is a claim that exceeds a certain threshold. Now remember, for those who aren't super familiar, claims get filed and almost immediately within a day or so, an adjuster is going to set a reserve. And that reserve is the incurred loss. That's what they think the claim is going to cost. So someone comes in, shoulder strain, maybe they think it's really bad. If it's an acute injury or, like a crush or something like that, they're going to put $30,000 on it. The first thing you want to do in your special handling instructions is say, look, any claim that comes in that hits a reserve over, and we always use like $25,000 or $50,000. Here are the lists of people that are going to be notified. And even before this, one of the first things we'd have on our special handling instructions is, here is the name and information for everybody that needs to be notified, and here's the person that at the client level that is the main contact for all claims. That's going to be someone in charge of safety. It's whoever the main contact is. Because all these special handling instructions are going to get tied to the account within whatever claims reporting system that the insurance carriers have. So having the first piece be, here are the names and players. So for my large complex accounts, what we would do is we'd have our main contact, usually the HR person, the safety person, who the one who's in charge of handling day-to-day claims at the client level. And then we're going to have secondary accounts and we're going to assign them. We're going to assign them by location. So like for my cheese customers, if we had 6 plants, we're going to have a lead, a sub lead, and these are going to be secondary. And then we're going to specifically map out exactly how we want that to look in terms of communication. But it all starts and stops with your main contact. So giving them an org chart and explaining to the insurance carrier, these are the people that should be notified for certain matters is really important. So when a claim comes in and it reaches a certain threshold, here's who you notify. So if a claim comes in at Cheese Plant 1 and you're setting a reserve for over $50,000, I expect an email to go from the adjuster, especially if the people weren't involved, the adjuster directly to my primary contact, and then the plant manager at the plant that was done, notifying them that we have a claim that's exceeded $50,000, and a simple email. The second thing I would do, you absolutely have to do this, and this is a huge pain in the ass if you haven't already done it. If you have a multi-location, and even if you don't have a multi-location account, even if you just have an account with 500 employees and 4 different divisions, location coding is important. If you want to extract risk management summaries and actionable intelligence out of your work comp loss trend for where's problems, why am I having shoulder problems on second shift in the paint line? You data in, data out. If you're putting shit into your system, you're going to get shit out. And all of the magic we had and all the magic AI has to make your reports look really cool. Go back and look at the work comp episode I just did. It only matters if the data is useful. So you need to have your claims coded correctly going into the carrier. So building out a location code. I spend a lot of times with my complex customers building out a location code. And don't have analysis paralysis. Don't have analysis paralysis. If you dive down into third shift on the paint line, only guys over the age of 50, you're going to have a bunch of categories that maybe only have one claim. That's not trend, that's analysis paralysis. So build out logical. Ask your broker for help. Ask the carrier for help for location coding. You want to know time of day. You want to know day of the week. You want to know division. You want to know which shift. You want to know which location. But make sure that you're doing it in a way that you can actually glean actionable intelligence. The next one, the insurance carriers are probably getting really good with AI and doing reporting. So I mentioned in my last podcast that I did on Work Comp, we used to send as a nice touch and CC brokers on monthly loss runs. It's probably something that carriers are going to be better at than insurance brokers. So make sure that you have a distribution list and for loss runs, getting to the right people with the right cadence. Compensability. If a claim comes in and it's flagged for fraud or it's got some kind of flagging that goes on, or there's a question about its deniability, there should always be a flag and it always be a reporting guideline. Me as a broker, if we have a questionable claim or one that's going to be denied, we want to know about it. So think about your customer. Think about what happens when a work comp claim is denied. A lot of people, when you're a broker and you're talking to a customer, you get excited. We denied 40% of the claims that came in. Yeah, but when you deny a claim and that worker's going back to all the other workers and saying, they just denied my work comp claim, that's going to light a fire. So deniability is a good thing to have. It doesn't mean that you carte blanche to approve every claim, but how's that communication handled so it doesn't start a small wildfire before you're prepared to handle it with maybe that shop supervisor, for example. Much like you do on notice and distribution lists when you have claims that come in of a certain amount, when an insurance carrier, and this is the one that probably gets overlooked more, when an insurance adjuster decides to increase the reserve by $80,000, let's say that the soft tissue shoulder injury that we thought was a strain that's been getting PT for 6 weeks, it's been on our loss run reserve for 10 grand. All of a sudden there's a recommendation of surgery. You're in between claim reviews and that now jumped that claim to $150,000 reserve. How's that communication look? When a claim goes from 20 grand to 150 grand, people need to know that's going to impact things like experience mod. It's going to call into question what kind of investigation have we done an IME. So when the reserve increase happens, who gets notified and what's the plan of action? Litigation management, 2 things with litigation. Unfortunately, despite work comp being a sole remedy, there are times when there's litigation. It doesn't happen a ton in Wisconsin, but it happens a lot in other states. So, what triggers happen when litigation? And I would say that's going to have the same distribution and awareness that needs to go out that you're going to see for reserve increases. The only thing I would add to that is if you operate predominantly in a state, if you operate in Wisconsin, talk to your insurance carrier and figure out who they use for work comp litigation. This goes back to things I've harped on in these podcasts a ton. Don't wait and assume that the insurance carrier's preferred counsel is going to be who your client trusts to handle a legal matter that involves their employees and has their reputation. Don't believe that they don't have an opinion. So if they've got a panel of attorneys that are going to handle defense for work comp claims, why don't you figure out, hey, our preference is these two. If they can't work, then I'll let you choose. So most carriers have, two or three or four different firms that they use. Nurse case management. I can't tell you how many times throughout my career I watched us argue for a nurse case manager. A nurse case manager is going to be a nurse that works for the insurance company that is going to be assigned to complex cases to make sure the treatment plan is being followed and that it makes sense and it's in accordance with the best interests of all parties. These people, there's different rules for how nurses get assigned. What rules? How often do you want a nurse? Do you want the same nurse every single time? Those nurses have direct interaction. They go to doctor's appointments with your injured workers at times. So how are you utilizing them? At what threshold are they automatically assigned? They can, on large claims, the nurse can have a huge impact on the quality and the distribution of care and for feedback directly to your insurance adjuster. Same with IMEs. What's going to be the IME protocol? Independent medical examination is your one bullet to call into question the authenticity of the injury or the treatment plan. When are you going to use it? How many do you get to use? Who gets to deploy it? If an IME is scheduled, that should be a lot like a reserve increase. I want that triggered. Those things should be talked about in claim reviews. Next one, claim reviews. Quarterly claim reviews is kind of the norm. If you got an account that's generating $500,000 or more in total premium and they have the need, meaning they have a claim frequency issue or they just, really manage their work comp well, quarterly claim reviews in a world of Zoom is not that hard. I would try to ask for quarterly claim reviews. At a minimum, get 2 claim reviews. Insurance carriers, this is a lot of work for them. They might put a threshold on the claims they want to discuss, but try to get quarterly claim reviews. But always say to your carrier, be friendly. Look, if we don't need it, we'll be the first one to cancel it because they are a lot of work, but there is no substitute for having a dedicated time to sit through and talk about claims. Unfortunately, that is a lot of the time when things are noticed that could be done differently. Things like, can we do an IME? Things like, hey, does that reserve need to be that high? Packet development. This is something that I had as kind of a calling card. When your injured worker gets injured and they're going to the doctor, whether it's that first trip to the urgent care or they're going to a follow-up doctor, what are they taking with them? The amount of time that gets wasted because a doctor doesn't know what your restrictions are. A doctor doesn't know. A doctor might say, hey, you can't go back to work because they don't know that there's light duty available. They might say, hey, yeah, no, you have a weight restriction. But if they don't know that they could have work that's less than 5 pounds, they're going to say no work when they would have said, yeah, absolutely, that person can count paper clips. Develop a packet that works with your carrier. Maybe they already have one or your broker does that says, look, every worker, when they go to the doctor, they're going to take this piece of paper and they're going to force that doctor to do their job, that physician, and they're going to fill out changes in work restrictions. You want to cut down on your indemnity losses. You want to have return to work be prominent. Give the paperwork. Force your injured employee to say, hey, doctor, my employer gave me this. Can you fill it out quick? It only needs 5 or 6 questions, but it's gonna allow for everybody to know the condition, the status of their availability, and it's gonna cut down on lost time, especially in the gap from the immediate acute injury to the time when everybody figures out that person could be doing light duty. Dedicated adjusters. Large accounts should have dedicated adjusters. You're probably not in a world anymore where you can get medical. These are like the paper cuts or I just needed a stitch or two and I'm back to work. Those are going to be highly automated. You're probably not going to get a dedicated medical only claim adjuster. Most carriers aren't even necessarily having people touch those files. And I imagine that's becoming even more pronounced with the rise of AI. However, indemnity losses, lost time claims, surgeries, your director of first impressions is your adjuster. Not only should you have a dedicated adjuster with a backup, because God forbid they go on vacation, but if you're about to switch carriers and you got $1 million work comp program, you should interview who that dedicated adjuster is going to be. A lot of time is spent in my life as a broker managing. I don't really like my adjuster. My adjuster doesn't treat me well. They were really mean to this employee. They didn't call me back. Interview that person. That person is as important as your broker liaison. Make sure you spend some time making sure you have a good one with your carrier. I had a lot of clients that stayed with work comp carriers because they love their adjuster because that adjuster got to know them. Next, if you need a script, I had 3 customers that did not call people employees. They called them team members. So we put in our special handling instructions right on the screen when someone pulled up that account, referred to the injured worker as team member, not employee. Team member. They said it out loud. They never use the employee. If you need that for culture development and you're spending enough money, go get it. Go get it. Put it in those special handling instructions. The last one is we ran into this sometimes. If this is carrier dependent, the carriers have multiple views that they can give both customers and brokers for claims notes. What you want to get as close to as possible for both the broker as well as the buyer is the screen that the adjuster uses, not some diluted screen that's just got, a couple notes that's not in real time. If you're doing your job and you have a very active customer and you have a really good work comp liaison, they want to be able to look in real time what's going on with claims. You can't modify claim notes, that's the carrier's job, but you can make sure that you're seeing all the data points that you would like to have. These are just a few. My point is for this episode is pre-negotiate this. You have no leverage after your renew. And just because you're not moving carriers doesn't mean you can't. Renewal time is to say, hey, we're gonna spend some time. I want these 5 things. If you don't ask, much like anything in insurance, you're not gonna get it. And these are the things that can differentiate. Most of my new business wins in the last 5 years, when we said, hey, we want to set up special handling instructions and we want to make sure we get this dialed in, most of my new customers were like, we've never done this before. So take advantage of it, buyers, take advantage of it, brokers, as a nice way to improve the customer experience